The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Integrating and Automating Processes and Tools, where we'll be discussing key processes for IT support functions, how these processes complement each other, as well as discussing how to make the most out of your process integration and automation. I'm Scarlett and I'm SDI's industry analyst, and I'm joined today by Brian Hendry, who is the consulting business manager from Axios, who we should have on the line. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Scarlett.
Hiya, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Looking forward to the webinar.
Brilliant. So we've released a white paper on process integration and automation, which you can find on the Axios website. Is that right, Brian?
That's correct, yes.
Brilliant. So we'll be delving into the topics discussed in that report and expanding on them. So on that note, let's get into it. Okay, so first off, why do we have processes? And that might seem like a bit of a redundant question, but many support teams and organizations function without processes at all. But processes ensure that service delivery is consistent, effectively managed, and that all support staff work towards the same goal. They can enable us to document things, how they should be done, so that we can do them exactly the same way every time, or at least try to. Processes can also help to provide clarity and transparency to your infrastructure, stabilize service availability, and improve customer satisfaction. Furthermore, processes can result in a more efficient service, which can ultimately reduce service costs. In short, good processes maximize efficiency and help to guarantee quality, and efficiency can be maximized further by integrating your processes. This is because segregated processes create silos of data and knowledge, which has an impact on the efficiency of processes, as one process's output can be another's input. So by integrating complementing processes, they can become almost like one fluid process. Furthermore, integrated processes can help to improve the reliability of IT, open up communication lines across an organization, reduce the amount of repeated work by support teams, and can help staff to work more effectively. And this can then have a positive impact on things like performance metrics and support costs. At the end of last year, SDI sent out a census survey, which asked service desk professionals to specify which processes fell under the remit of the service desk. It showed that incident management and request fulfillment were identified, unsurprisingly, as the two most common processes which the service desk is responsible for. However, we can see that a significant proportion of service desks are also responsible for processes which would typically belong to other areas of IT, like problem change and asset and configuration management. So Brian's going to go into a bit more detail about this later and how these processes interact, but they're all pertinent to the service desk, whether it carries out relevant procedures or simply that the information or outputs of the process is required by support staff to perform their roles more effectively. Speaking of efficiency, while integrating processes can greatly improve the efficiency of your IT services and the wider organization, to get the most out of process integration, you need to make sure that there's no unnecessary or wasteful aspects to your individual processes, which could be taking up valuable time and resources. Before attempting to integrate processes, an IT support function should first of all review their processes for inefficiencies and wasteful procedures and refine them where necessary. When done well, this can have a positive effect of bringing these processes back to a higher level of efficiency and provide a better foundation to integrate with other processes. There are a variety of reasons that a process can become wasteful or inefficient. It may be that there's been a considerable change in a team, the technology that they use, or the services they provide. Bringing these processes back to the optimum level of efficiency can be accomplished in a few ways and can be a relatively minor task. Other processes may be beyond repair or are simply no longer useful, in which case these processes may need to be retired or replaced. Ensuring that your processes are not wasteful and don't contain unnecessary steps can lead to significant improvements in efficiency, productivity, and consistency of IT support and the service it provides. There are several ways an IT support function can identify wasteful or redundant procedures. Firstly, performance metrics are a good way to flag any inefficiency or concern. Metrics such as average time to resolve, bounce rate, and reopen tickets are all good indicators of whether a process, particularly incident management, is efficient or whether it requires reviewing and potentially refining. Moreover, customer feedback provides an outside perspective on the service operation, and it may be able to reveal areas lacking in consistency and efficiency that support staff may not have considered or been aware of. Service desks should also proactively engage customers to solicit their feedback about process issues which they may not have formally communicated. Additionally, engaging in business relationship activities could allow the IT support function to see a different perspective entirely, as processes can be evaluated against strategic business considerations as well as concerns of the customer. IT support have the incredible advantage of having access to the people that spend the most time in contact with different ITSM processes. Service desk analysts are likely to have identified a number of opportunities for improvement that may have been missed by other stakeholders. Therefore, their valuable insights should be considered and sought after by managers. Analysts will also probably have had a considerable amount of feedback from customers about processes they're not particularly happy with, but don't feel it's worthwhile, or may be unsure of how to formally complain or offer a suggestion. So there are a couple of methods you could use to refine processes. It's a big part of lean methodology, and it ties quite heavily into service improvement. Again, involving customers and business stakeholders in reviewing processes can help the service desk to get a broader understanding of how different procedures support service delivery. A basic template for refining processes and achieving a more efficient service could be the following. The first step would be to map out the current process flow from beginning to end. What are the different procedures, who's the process owner, and who's involved? And then you would measure the process throughput and how long it takes from beginning to end. You should discuss with the process stakeholders what's necessary and what works well, and what could be done differently to improve the process. Prioritize the identified needs and ideas of what could be done differently. Once you've identified areas for improvement, you should begin to implement them. Improvement efforts should be structured into small incremental changes, and be sure to involve the stakeholders throughout the development and implementation stages, either through simply communicating changes or having them contribute to improvement efforts. And then you measure the process throughput before and after each improvement cycle and review the results and outcomes. And repeat this step until you've implemented all the necessary identified improvements. Finally, you map out the new process flow from beginning to end. To achieve maximum efficiency, repeat steps as many times as necessary or as part of a continual improvement initiative. And be sure to make a note of the inputs and outputs of each process and compare them with other process flows, because this can act as a basis for understanding where to begin with process integration. One aspect of lean methodology which is used quite a lot in DevOps philosophy is value stream mapping. Some of the main aims of DevOps is to make things more efficient, reduce overheads, and reduce rework. Value stream mapping can be a great way of achieving this because it looks to remove inefficiencies and waste. The first step in creating a value stream map for the service desk is to understand your value-adding activities. These typically fall into three categories: what the customer wants you to do, i.e. resolving an issue and restoring normal service levels as quickly as possible; the information used to achieve the desired results, i.e. information from the customer regarding the issue or relevant data regarding configuration items or assets; and finally, resolving that issue as quickly as possible and, if possible, first time. Any activity that exists outside of these criteria could be considered waste. Secondly, you need to define what your focus is. Are you aiming to reduce incident volumes with problem management, or increase self-service uptake, or reduce the time it takes to fulfill service requests? Your focus may be laid out in your vision and mission statements or your service desk strategy, or underpinned in your CSFs and KPIs for the service desk. The next stage is to walk the process, i.e. map out from start to finish every step within a process or workflow. This will allow you to fully understand a process before attempting improvement initiatives. The process you map out will differ depending on what you're looking to improve, but this is a basic example of what it could look like. Make a note of roughly how long the full process takes to carry out, and also how long each individual step takes. You should include what data inputs are needed for the process as well as the outputs, and that can be used to understand how processes can be integrated. Between each procedure, add wait times in hours or days, the number of people needed to complete each step, which steps are performed by technology, and any other relevant information. This will allow you to see the areas of the process where there are bottlenecks, long wait times, inefficiencies, and steps which require a large number of resources. It will also give you a perspective on how long you're spending on valuable steps versus how much time is being wasted. Using this value stream can help you to identify aspects of a process or workflow which could be improved to reduce the inefficiencies, rework, and overhead. Another method for process refining, rather than working backwards from where you are, is to go from the ground up. It's another adapted lean method, which is typically known as the minimum viable product. Essentially, it's a way of building a product in the shortest time possible, using the least amount of resources possible, and reducing costs while still meeting basic customer demands. It gives you a product which can be worked on and developed over time using customer feedback and minimizing the risk of your product failing at the first hurdle. A common analogy for this would be a car. So rather than building a car outright, which requires higher costs and resources and more potential to fail, you could start with a skateboard. It does the basic role of a car. It gets you from A to B, and it meets the minimum requirements of a customer. So from there, you engage with your customer to find out what else they want from the product. So they want to get from A to B faster, so you build a bicycle. And then after more feedback, you build a motorbike. And then eventually you end up with a car. So you've ended up with the same product, but now it meets the exact requirements of your customers, and there's less waste and less risk of failure. A similar method can be applied to processes. A minimum viable process would be a process which achieves its purpose with the least possible amount of excess steps and resources. So with the minimum critical activities, you follow a similar process of adding small changes and improvements, using feedback from stakeholders to eventually get your process to where you want it to be. In doing that, you achieve a few things. Firstly, you're empowering your stakeholders and including them in the process from the beginning, so they're getting the most value out of the process that they can. Secondly, this is a good way of embedding a continual improvement culture into your service teams, which can be dispersed throughout IT. Finally, making small iterative improvements, you can save a lot of hassle and time getting to an efficient and effective process, rather than waiting for bigger, complex improvements to happen, which could potentially cause more harm than good. Overall, you're in a better place because you haven't built waste into the process, and you can realize more potential and efficiently from the outset. So by refining your processes, we should be able to identify procedures which could be automated. Process automation is becoming increasingly commonplace within the industry because it can help to further maximize the efficiency and throughput of ITSM processes. As well as processes, many tools and technologies now have the capability to be integrated into the IT infrastructure to automate a number of processes and procedures, which can be repetitive, time-consuming, and low value. For example, when logging a ticket, a service desk solution integrated with the configuration management database can leverage automation to autofill fields such as PC serial numbers. Similarly, an ITSM tool which is integrated with the known error database and automated can alert a service desk analyst to whether an incident is related to a known error and supply them with a workaround or prompt them to escalate the incident to problem management. Giving analysts the best chance to perform optimally can reduce your average incident resolution times, which can then have a knock-on effect of improvements in other metrics like call wait times, average cost per incident, first time fix, and so on. There are 3 complexity levels of process automation, and they're basic, enhanced, and cognitive. Each have different implications and applications for a support function, and Brian's going to go into a bit more detail about what each level entails. Each support function will have different capabilities, infrastructure, and resources, which will dictate the level of automation they're able to implement. While cognitive automation may allow for maximum efficiency of processes, it may not be the most effective option for some, particularly smaller support functions. As such, it's necessary to fully understand how automation can benefit your organization and which complexity of automation best fits your requirements, resources, and budget. So I'm now going to hand over to Brian, who's going to go into a bit more detail about how different processes interact and can be integrated.
Thank you, Scarlett. That was really interesting. as Scarlett said earlier, my name's Brian Hendry. I'm the Consulting Business Manager at Axios Systems, and my role is really heading up the Axios Global Services team, who are responsible for the delivery of process and tool engagements and implementations with our customer base. So this is going to be the agenda. These are the topics we're going to cover during the course of this presentation. We'll talk about why we need process and tool integrations, fragmented and integrated situations. We'll cover a bit about incident, problem, and change as the three main processes we're talking about today. A little bit how we review those processes and sort them. Then a bit about scaling up of integration and automation between processes and tools, and then some final thoughts and Q&A at the end if you have any questions. There will also be poll questions during the presentation, and the first one follows this slide. Sorry. Oops.
Do you want me
sorry,
to?
Scarlett, yes, sorry, the first poll question.
So I've launched that now. So we'll give
Okay.
the attendees a couple of seconds to answer that.
Yeah, it's really about your top challenges, current top challenges. So is it improving the processes, is it process automation, process integration, tool integration and data sharing, or improving the speed and quality of outcomes for your IT customers? So if we just give you a minute to make a choice.
So we've had just over half of attendees answer now. So just a few more seconds and hopefully we'll get as many as possible. All right, I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. Can you see that, Brian?
Sorry, yes, I can. Sorry, I was on mute there. I apologise. So it looks like process automation is the clear winner, followed by improving the speed of quality and outcome for IT customers. Okay, that's quite interesting, isn't it? So a lot of it is around the automation of the processes themselves. Maybe people are feeling quite comfortable with the processes they have, but realizing that automation, obviously, as we'll see in the presentation in a minute, can help them actually make those processes more efficient and effective. Okay, thank you. Very interesting. So if we start looking at the presentation itself, why does process and tool integration matter? If we take the example on the slide, incident, problem, and chain processes, they need to work together to solve the issue for the IT customer. If the service desk can't get the customer back up and running, they'll obviously need the help of the support teams, but they also may also consider raising a problem with the problem management team so they can investigate and try to identify the root cause of the actual problem. Once the problem has been investigated, and if solving it requires a change to the infrastructure, then the change management process is invoked. These three processes are themselves part of a larger business super process, solving the issue for the customer, which is why they need to work together, sharing data, sharing tools, so that teams and executives have transparency and coordinating processes to reduce wait time and prevent blockages. With three teams looking after parts of a broader process, there are many opportunities for waste to creep into the system. Messy handovers between one team and another, creating rework, duplicated gathering of data, paying for multiple tools even to do the same job, even duplicated work. Integration matters because it helps all the moving parts in this process work together and reduces that waste, and it allows us to deliver outcomes faster and at a lower cost. As far as data and tools go, the customer and infrastructure data is going to be the same, or at least part of the same larger data set. So it does make sense to have data silos for each team. It doesn't make sense for each team to have their own tools, to spend time on building, maintaining integrations. It makes more sense to have a single platform for managing IT processes and a single shared view of the IT of the customer, so that the solve the issue super process is managed, measured, and optimized from a holistic perspective. If we look about now a little bit about the fragmented versus the integrated situation, if we look at processes first, with fragmented processes, we have awkward handovers where some things might go missing. Effort is duplicated across teams using different processes and practices, and quality is inconsistent, with success depending on individuals. Also, a narrow local focus means we lose sight of the broader business outcomes. Where processes are integrated, we have a clean handovers where nothing gets lost. We also have an effective division of labour, which enables centres of excellence. And with a global focus, all moving parts are focused on delivering the right business outcomes. With fragmented tools, there's obviously disjointed process automation with no continuous flow between the different solutions. Building and maintaining integrations between solutions consumes valuable IT resources, and we have the kind of swivel chair integration where IT resources are wasted on rekeying data from one system into another. Where tools are integrated, we have end-to-end IT process automation within one system. We have management visibility over work in progress, process performance, and unit cost of service provision. Timescale, cost, and quality are consistent and predictable, and IT staff have more time to execute infrastructure improvements and continuing service improvements and digital transformation projects. An integrated solution with one data model means all required data is available to everyone who needs it. With the final part, with the data, knowledge, and information, where that's fragmented, we have data silos, as Scarlett was mentioning earlier, where data is duplicated, increasing the effort, redundancy, and conflict. We are time wasted reinventing the wheel is the norm, as know-how is locked up in silos. We also have stunted automation capabilities leading to poor insight of the current operation and ultimately poor business decisions. Where data, information, and knowledge is integrated, we have an efficient, accurate, living data store. The shared knowledge base grows exponentially in size and value, and this high data quality supports advanced automation and confident decision making. If we now look at some of the integration points for incident management, we have things like computer telephony integration, and we can save seconds on every call with automated caller ID and incident form population. This will have a positive impact on call times, call costs, business disruption, and IT customer satisfaction. Using directory services such as Active Directory, we can actually reduce logging time and eliminate human error by having a lot of the user information pre-populated in the system. The configuration management process allows us to see affected hardware, software, service details, and impacted users. And this information contains information about the relationship stored in the CMDB to make sense of the issue faster. With the problem management process, we can see known errors and workarounds from the known error database to find quick fixes. And by linking incident records to problem records, we can accelerate future fixes even more. The knowledge management process empowers end users potentially to fix their own issues by exposing suitable knowledge artifacts and allowing them to find fixes in the knowledge base themselves. With the change management process, we get to see the operational history. Has this issue been caused by a recent change? What does the change history look like for the affected service or asset? Does a recent change record need to be rolled back? And with infrastructure and service monitoring, it allows us to make sense of systems and monitoring data and automatically perhaps create incidents or trigger automated resolution workflows. And we can see the operational status to pinpoint root cause quickly. Some of the problem integration, integration points, by creating problem records from incident records, where there's an underlying fault, we can actually start to perform root cause analysis and identify the true cause of the incidents. And we can link repeated incidents to that problem record, as I said earlier, to actually increase the fix time. The configuration management process, we can see connections and dependencies to understand the architecture and identify a root cause faster. Plus, we can assess impact on systems, services, and users to help prioritize problem records. The knowledge management process, again, it might help us find root cause analysis tips, diagnostic process advice, and find fixes for common infrastructure failures to help solve the underlying problem faster. And with the change management process, again, has this been caused by a recent change? Can a recent change be rolled back? And the infrastructure and service monitoring, again, we're able to check the status of infrastructure components to pinpoint root causes. Change management integration, again, obviously we can accept RFCs from problem management when resolving the underlying problem requires complex action, which must be subjected to the formal change control process. The configuration management process allows us to see impact devices, services, and user communities, enabling better and faster evaluation of changes and their business impact and priorities. We have visibility over the impact and urgency of an underlying infrastructure issue which need to be resolved. Again, we can use the knowledge management process for finding pre-existing change plans, risk assessments, and perhaps runbook templates to help guide you to a faster, more successful change. And the infrastructure service monitoring part allows us to check the infrastructure status before and after the change to spot unintended consequences and assess if the change has been successful or whether it needs to be rolled back. When we look at reviewing processes and fixing them, then there are several areas to consider in the methodology. The first one really is to evaluate the processes. And the recommendation is always to fix faulty processes first. Why? Well, because integrating and automating faulty processes simply delivers the wrong outcomes faster, meaning you've wasted your investment of time and budget. This is a very common pitfall based on a faulty assumption that your problems can be solved by technology alone. So how do you evaluate those processes? Look at the quantitative and qualitative data, for example, performance metrics and feedback. Performance metrics can be a good way to flag areas of inefficiency or concern. Metrics, such as average time to resolve, bounce rate, and reopen tickets, can all be good indicators of whether a process, particularly incident management, is efficient, or whether it requires reviewing and potentially refining. Once we've done that and evaluated those processes, we can come into the process refinement. And this is where you begin to refine the processes in question. This particular practice is reminiscent of the Lean principle, as again Scarlett was saying earlier. Service desk professionals should approach process improvement by analysing which parts deliver value to the business and work to remove or refine those that do not. Service desk professionals should not only focus on areas they believe provide value, but consult customers and business stakeholders to get a broader understanding of how the different procedures tie into service delivery. Work to refine those processes. Eliminate waste within processes before you look for waste you can remove by integrating processes, data, and tools. Sometimes you need to ask the customer to identify which tasks add value and which do not. Also, ask what's missing from the outcome for the overall service experience. Once we've refined the processes, we can prioritize them. And you may also have noticed that in the last few slides, tools, processes, and data are all placed together. This is because integration should be approached from an outcomes perspective, connecting tools, data, and processes in an order that makes the most business sense, not an arbitrary approach that tackles tools first, then processes, then data. It is at this stage where you will do the holistic analysis of your process ecosystem. What are the touch points? What are the inputs and outputs? Where are the overlaps and redundancies? Where can data silos be leveraged by other processes? And finally, we execute. Now, each instance will look different, but there are some high-level strategies for integrating support processes. Control processes in one tool, capture all data as a single source of truth so that all teams are aligned around the same data set, and automate everything. Tool integration enables more automation, lowering the day-to-day administration burden and releasing IT people to spend more time working on improvement projects and business innovations. Once we've created a center for service excellence within IT and established a high degree of credibility as a service provider, then it also allows us the opportunity, or the IT department can actually help other internal service providers improve their own service delivery and support processes, and extending the IT service support portal into an enterprise support portal, a one-stop shop where employees can access the full enterprise portfolio of services provided by all parts of the business. So there's now another second poll question.
Yeah, I'll just bring that up for you.
Okay.
There we go. So it should be live now.
Okay, so this one is asked, to what extent do you offer services and support via web and mobile? So it's a pick one. So is it we only use phone and email channels? We have a web IT portal. We have a web and mobile portal, or enterprise service portal access across IT and other service providers. I'll give you a few seconds there to answer that.
I'm quite interested to see the results of this because enterprise service management or shared service management is something that we're seeing a lot more across the industry. So it'll be interesting to see how many of the attendees actually offer an enterprise service portal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we've had about, oh no, we're getting more in now. All right, I'm gonna, oh no, still more. All right, I'll close the poll now and share the results. Okay, can you see that, Brian?
Yes, I can. I'm afraid the enterprise service portal comes out pretty badly on that one, doesn't it? So yeah, it seems to be quite a traditional, I guess, if that's the right word, mix of portal, mobile, email, but the enterprise service portal doesn't seem to be doing very well there. That's an interesting point, Scarlett, because, as I say, from our perspective as well, that kind of enterprise service management element is something we've seen. We've seen it for a while. We've seen it for a number of years, but really begin to actually take hold in the past couple of years. So I would have, like you, maybe expected that to be a little bit higher than I see there. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. That's very interesting. When we come to automation, then. There are different things we need to think about. Many tools and technologies now have the capability to be integrated into the IT infrastructure to automate a number of the processes and procedures which can be routinely repeatable, time-consuming and low value. There's also more potential to be had from automating processes and streamlining transition of inputs and outputs. For example, when logging a ticket, a service desk solution integrated with the CMDB can leverage automation to autofill fields such as PC serial numbers. Similarly, an ITSM tool, which is integrated with a known error database, can alert a service desk analyst to whether an incident is related to a known error and supply them with a workaround, or prompt them to escalate the incident to problem management. There are 3 complexity levels of process automation: basic, enhanced, and cognitive. Each have different implications and applications for the support function. The basic form of process automation is most commonly characterized by the tools which tend to carry out a series of simple tasks and follow predefined rules. It is capable of carrying out tasks which are typically repetitive and low value, with well-defined inputs such as data entry, incident categorization and prioritization, simple request fulfillment, and transaction processing. These are the types of tasks where limited subjective thinking or judgment is required and will possibly require human intervention during the process. A more enhanced form of IT process automation involves natural language processing, NLP. The inputs for this type of process automation are more complex and as a result require machine learning and in-depth data processing. This is often seen in service desks with tools such as chatbots and virtual assistants, which are used to provide first-line support to customers and also support to human second-line people by retrieving relevant knowledge base articles and following procedures for escalating calls. The third, the intricate and cognitive form of automation, is where inputs are much more complex and less well-defined, and the processes require more decision-making ability. Some examples of this type of automation include infrastructure data analytics and proactive incident and problem detection. This signifies less reliance on humans to analyze large amounts of data for a potentially minimal outcome, and automated tools are more efficient and accurate. The level of IT process automation maturity that you require will be based on the size and complexity of your IT ecosystem. Small organizations will benefit greatly from the basic automation to reduce day-to-day overheads and focus more attention on new technology projects to support the digital agenda. But the cost of cognitive process automation may be too high at this point to yield a worthwhile return on investment for most organizations. The level and volume of automation you require should always be based on where and how automation delivers the biggest benefits to your business. And there's a third poll question now.
Okay, that should be launched.
Okay. And this one asked about what the level of IT support automation that you currently employ. So is it basic, as we talked about, rule-based? Is it enhanced process automation based on tools with basic machine learning intelligence? Or is it cognitive process automation based on probabilistic thinking, able to handle fuzzy situations and contexts? So again, if you would just pick one of those, please, that would be great.
Okay, we seem to have a good number of votes now, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much as expected, I suppose. Although the cognitive one's quite interesting, 7%. That's maybe a little bit higher than I would have thought. 24% again for the enhanced is good too. It's certainly something. The chat bots and the virtual assistants are certainly something we're seeing starting to come into the equation with customer implementations, but it's not that frequent. Certainly not a quarter at this point, but it's good to see it's there. Okay. So some final thoughts then. So to be able to unlock your process's efficiency, it is necessary to review them, understand where any inefficiencies lie, and implement improvements accordingly. This activity of refining should include appropriate stakeholders and process owners to ensure that valuable procedures are not overlooked. Integrating processes is also an excellent way to improve the efficiency of an IT support function. Understanding commonalities between different ITSM processes and their inputs and outputs can allow you to integrate and make communications between different processes more fluid and efficient, while improving staff productivity, resolution speed of incidents and requests, and ultimately the customer experience. Process automation can be an incredibly useful tool for the service desk and the IT support function as a whole, as it reduces the amount of time service desk analysts spend on menial, repetitive tasks while delivering the same level of value at a faster rate and a lower cost. The service desk, IT, and the business should work holistically to understand what each requires from ITSM processes and how they can be improved to deliver the most potential and value for each stakeholder. So that was the end of the presentation, really. I guess now, Scarlett, it's an opportunity for any questions that we have.
Yeah, we'll give the attendees a couple of minutes just to ask any questions that they may have. But I have a query. So if I was a service desk manager and I hadn't, or my service desk hadn't done any form of process refinement or anything like that, where do you think I should start?
It's a good question, and I think a lot of it comes down to to me, it's always the same answer to a lot of these questions. It's value to the business. So I think we need to understand from an IT perspective, which processes and which parts of those processes deliver most value to the business, and which parts of the business value most. I think in IT, quite often we have a perception of how our processes impact the business and what it means for the business, but I think often, unfortunately, we can get that a little bit wrong. So, to me, it's always working with the business to identify perhaps areas that they think IT aren't performing well in, or areas they think IT could do better in, and using that maybe as the starting point to say, okay, well, we've obviously got an issue maybe with the request fulfillment process. That's what the business is telling us. So let's review it, let's refine it, and actually make it more responsive to what they actually want, which is the whole point of it. As I say, it's all about that customer experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For a long time, we've seen that IT and the service desk is seen as like a separate part of the business, and but now we're definitely starting to see that it's becoming more of a holistic view, and starting to talk to the business is certainly a good way to improve that relationship.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and it's something we've been evangelizing about, I think, for a long time, certainly in the ITSM world. And it's not just IT. I think when we do expand this to through maybe enterprise service management into some of the other supporting areas like finance or HR or whatever facilities, I think we hit the same sort of problems there as well. That those departments don't necessarily really understand what their customers are actually looking for. So, I think it's not just IT that's at fault here. I think it's just maybe just a general trait we have, unfortunately.
Okay, so we're getting a couple of questions in now. We have one from Tracy, and that says, in terms of a regular review of processes to keep in line with new innovation and development, is there an optimal time for reviewing? I'm not sure whether Tracy means in terms of how often you should review your processes or how long you should spend doing it, but what's your view, Brian?
It's an interesting question. Yes, I mean, process review. Firstly, process review is obviously something we should be doing, and unfortunately, I think, from my experience, organisations may define a process, and then when you ask them to see it, they take it off the shelf and blow the dust off it, because it hasn't been looked at for the past 4 or 5 years. How often you should be reviewing it? I think it really depends. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to the importance for that process for the business. If that's the case, we should be talking to the business on a regular basis and reviewing processes where appropriate. Again, if we have any major projects that have come in or new services that we're delivering, there's opportunities there to start again, as part of those new processes, as part of those new services, reviewing our underlying processes anyway. And I think, even just on an annual basis, even if, just for the simple answer, maybe an annual basis, certainly as a review would be probably the minimum, I would suggest. But again, a lot of it depends on how quickly your business is moving, new services that are coming in, the increase in maybe the size or the scale of your business as well. All of those things might actually determine more frequent reviews. And a lot of it, again, let's talk to the business, let's survey the business, let's keep doing that. And if we do that, that will give us some indication of, okay, maybe it's time to review this type of process again.
Yeah, and I'd just add that particularly if continuous service improvement is part of your IT service, if it's part of your culture, reviewing processes is definitely something you can add into that. I can see that someone in the audience has had their hand raised for a little while. And if you have a question, please put it in the questions submission box. We have Nabil asking if Axios Systems are offering a cognitive process automation within their tool.
Thank you for the question. Certainly, we've recently done a lot of work with customers around chatbots and virtual assistants, certainly in the enhanced elements and the enhanced areas of automation. To my knowledge, we haven't done anything yet with the cognitive part. That's certainly nothing I've heard of yet. And again, a lot of it is, I think, the maturity of the business, of the organization itself. I don't think many, although we had that, was it 7%? I think, which was higher than we expected, certainly higher than I expected. We've not seen many organizations, certainly from an Axios perspective, that are at that position yet where they want to go down that route. But certainly the move into the chatbots and the virtual assistants is certainly there. And we've seen a number of customers and worked with a number of customers in that area at this point.
Yeah, and research that SDI has done shows that less than a quarter of service desks are even looking into advanced automation and AI and those sorts of things. So it's something that's going to take quite a while for vendors to reach a certain maturity to allow their customers to do so. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's still very early days. It's still very early days in the chatbot area as well. So we're all learning through that at the minute. But certainly the cognitive part is still very early days.
Okay, well, I can't see any more questions coming in unless we get some late submissions. No, okay. Well, I think we should end it there. So thank you very much for joining me today, Brian. You've been very helpful, giving some great insight.
And thank you for leading the presentation, Scarlett. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.